the invisible trap destroying your focus. You think your problem is lack of discipline? It's not. You've been conditioned to fail. Pay attention to your pattern. You start the day with intention. You tell yourself, this time will be different. Then, something small pulls your attention. A notification, a quick check, a harmless break. Minutes turn into hours. You lose momentum. Then comes the guilt. You promise to try again tomorrow, and the cycle repeats. This is not laziness. Researchers studying behavior and motivation have shown that the brain is wired to chase what feels easy and rewarding in the moment. And right now, your environment is flooded with instant rewards. Fast content, endless scrolling, constant stimulation. Your brain adapts to that speed. It starts rejecting anything that requires effort. That's why important tasks feel heavy, not because you're weak, but because your brain has been trained to avoid them. Specialists in cognitive performance explain that when dopamine is constantly triggered by easy rewards, your baseline shifts. What used to feel normal now feels boring. What used to require focus now feels unbearable. So you try to force discipline, you push harder, you rely on motivation, and your brain pushes back even harder. If you understand this, everything changes. Because the solution is not more effort. It's removing what's sabotaging you. But before you try to build discipline, you need to stop making the one mistake that silently destroys your focus every single day. The discipline myth that keeps you stuck. You've been told that discipline is about pushing yourself harder, waking up motivated, forcing action no matter how you feel. That sounds strong, but it's exactly what keeps you stuck. Because the moment you depend on motivation, you lose control. Researchers in behavioral psychology have consistently observed that human behavior is not driven by willpower most of the time, but by patterns and energy conservation. Your brain is designed to save effort. It constantly looks for the easiest path available, not because you are weak, but because this is how your system is built to survive. So every time you try to force yourself to focus, you create internal resistance. One part of you wants to act. The other part wants to avoid effort. And the more pressure you apply, the stronger that resistance becomes. That's why some days you feel productive, and others you feel completely stuck. It's not inconsistency, it's dependence on a system that was never meant to be reliable. Experts in high performance explained that real discipline is not about intensity. It's about reducing the need to choose. The less you rely on decision and emotional state, the more stable your behavior becomes. This is where most people fail. They try to control action without controlling the conditions that generate that action. So they blame themselves. They say they lack discipline, when in reality, they are just using the wrong strategy. And if you keep doing this, you will keep repeating the same cycle. Trying guard there, failing again, losing trust in yourself. So, if discipline is not about forcing action, what is actually breaking your focus every single day? Your brain is addicted to distraction, and you didn't notice. You don't have a focus problem. You have a stimulation problem. Your brain has been trained to expect constant reward, fast inputs, quick hits, immediate feedback, and the more you feed it, the worse it gets. Researchers studying attention and behavior have shown that frequent exposure to high stimulation content changes how your brain evaluates effort. The more you consume easy rewards, the more normal tasks start to feel slow, heavy, and uncomfortable. That's why sitting down to work feels harder than scrolling. Not because the task is difficult, but because your brain is comparing it to something artificially stimulating. Specialists explain that dopamine is not just about pleasure, it's about anticipation. It drives what you want to do next. And when your brain gets used to fast, effortless rewards, it stops valuing anything that requires patience. So when you try to focus, your brain resists. It looks for an escape. It pushes you toward distraction, not by accident, but by conditioning. This is why you can spend hours on your phone without effort, but struggle to focus for 10 minutes on something important. The problem is not your discipline. The problem is that your baseline has been distorted, and until you fix that, no system, no routine, no strategy will hold. Because you are trying to build focus on top of a brain that has been trained to avoid it. And this is exactly where the real shift begins. Step 1. Reset your dopamine baseline. Before you try to focus, you need to fix what destroyed your focus in the first place. Most people try to add discipline on top of a brain that is overstimulated. That never works. You cannot build control while constantly feeding distraction. Researchers studying motivation and reward have observed that the brain adjusts to the level of stimulation it receives daily. The more intense and frequent the stimulation, the less sensitive your system becomes. What used to feel engaging now feels boring. What used to be manageable now feels exhausting. That is your current state, so the first step is not doing more. It is removing what is interfering. You don't need extreme detox. You need intelligent reduction. Start by eliminating micro-distractions that constantly spike your attention. Notifications, quick checks, background noise, fragmented inputs. These seem harmless, but they keep your brain in a loop of anticipation. Then delay your rewards. Stop giving your brain instant access to stimulation every time it feels discomfort. When you create space between impulse and reward, your brain starts recalibrating. Specialists in cognitive performance explain that when stimulation drops, your baseline begins to normalize, and when that happens, simple tasks stop feeling unbearable. Focus becomes possible again, not because you forced it, but because resistance decreased. You are not increasing discipline. You are removing interference. But this alone is not enough, because even with a reset brain, most people still fail for one reason. They keep relying on something that was never designed to sustain action. Step 2. Stop relying on decision. Create automation. You think your problem is lack of discipline? It's not. It's too many decisions. Every time you'll stop to think, should I do this now or later? You create friction, and your brain, designed to conserve energy, will almost always choose the easier option. Researchers in cognitive psychology have shown that decision-making drains mental energy quickly. The more choices you make throughout the day, the lower your ability to stay focused and consistent. This is why even highly motivated people collapse into distraction after a few hours. It's not a lack of strength, it's decision fatigue. So if your productivity depends on deciding every time, you will fail repeatedly. High-performance specialists approach this differently. They remove the need to decide. Instead of asking when should I work, they define fixed execution points. Same time, same place, same action. No negotiation. Instead of asking what should I do, they predefine the next step. Clear, simple, already chosen. Instead of relying on feeling ready, they rely on structure. This is automation. When behavior is automated, resistance drops. There is no internal debate. There is no emotional negotiation. There is only execution. And this is where discipline actually starts to become stable. Because discipline is not about pushing yourself in the moment. It's about eliminating the moments where you have the option not to act. But even with automation, most people still break. Not because they lack structure, but because something invisible keeps pulling them away at the exact moment they try to focus. Step 3. Eliminate hidden friction. You believe you lack focus, but what's actually stopping you is resistance you don't even see. Small things. Silent obstacles, details that seem irrelevant but completely change your behavior. Researchers studying human behavior have shown that even minimal increases in effort can drastically reduce the likelihood of action. When something feels slightly harder to start, your brain delays it, and delay quickly turns into avoidance. Look at your environment. Your phone is within reach. Your workspace is cluttered. Your task is vague. You don't know exactly where to begin. Each of these creates friction, not enough to be obvious, but enough to stop you. And your brain reacts instantly. It looks for the easier path. It shifts your attention. It pulls you away, not because you decided to procrastinate, but because the path of least resistance changed. Specialists in performance explain that behavior follows ease, not intention. You don't do what you plan. You do what is easiest in the moment. So if distraction is easier than focus, distraction will win every time. This is why removing friction is more powerful than increasing motivation. Make the starting point effortless. Prepare your environment before you begin. Remove everything that competes for your attention. Define exactly what the first action is, so there is no hesitation. You are not trying to be stronger. You are making the right action easier than the wrong one. And once you remove that invisible resistance, something changes. You stop hesitating. You start moving. But starting is still the hardest part. And if you don't train this next step, you will keep falling back into the same cycle. Step 4. Train your brain to start, not to finish. You've been focusing on the wrong battle. You think the challenge is finishing tasks. It's not. The real battle happens in the first few seconds before you begin. Researchers studying procrastination have observed that avoidance is not about the task itself, but about the emotional discomfort right before starting. Your brain anticipates effort, uncertainty, and possible failure. So it delays, it searches for relief. It pushes you towards something easier, and the longer you wait, the heavier the task feels. This is why you can think about doing something for hours, but once you finally start, it feels manageable. The resistance was never in the task. It was in the anticipation. So instead of training yourself to finish, you need to train yourself to start. High-performance specialists use a simple principle. Reduce the starting point to something so small that your brain cannot resist. Not the full task, just the first move. Open the document, write one line. Read one paragraph. Begin with something that feels almost effortless, because action removes resistance faster than thinking ever will. Once you start, momentum builds. Your brain shifts from avoidance to engagement. Dopamine begins to support the action instead of resisting it. And over time, this rewires your behavior. You stop negotiating with yourself. You stop waiting to feel ready. You become someone who starts immediately. That is where consistency is built. But even this is not enough to make discipline permanent. Because if your identity doesn't change, your behavior will always try to return to old patterns. Step 5. Build identity-based discipline. At some point, this stops being about tactics. It becomes about who you believe you are. If you see yourself as someone who lacks focus, your brain will prove that to you every single day. Not consciously, but through repetition. Every small failure reinforces that identity, and over time, it becomes automatic. Researchers studying behavior change have shown that actions follow identity more than intention. You don't act based on what you want. You act based on what feels consistent with who you believe you are. That's why temporary bursts of motivation don't last, because they don't change identity. They only create short-term effort. So if you want discipline that doesn't collapse, you need to rebuild how you see yourself. Not through affirmations, through evidence. Start collecting small, undeniable proofs. You sit down when you said you would. You start when it esse uncomfortable. You follow through even when you don't feel like Italiano. Each of these signals something to your brain. This is who you are now. Specialists in cognitive performance explain that the brain updates identity through repeated behavior, not intention. The more consistent the action, the stronger the identity becomes. And once identity shifts, everything changes. You no longer rely on motivation. You don't need to force discipline, because acting with focus stops being something you try to do. It becomes something you do naturally. But there is one final shift that separates people who understand this from those who actually take control. The final shift from force to control. Everything you've tried until now was based on force, trying harder, pushing more, fighting your own mind. That's why it never lasted, because force creates resistance. And resistance always wins in the long run. What you needed was control. Control over your environment, control over your inputs, control over the conditions that shape your behavior before you even act. Researchers and performance specialists consistently show that behavior is not random. It is a direct response to the system you live in. Change the system, and behavior follows. Keep the same system, and nothing changes. Before, you depended on motivation. Now, your environment removes distraction. Before, you relied on willpower. Now, your actions are automated. Before, starting felt heavy. Now, it's effortless. Before, you saw yourself as inconsistent. Now, your identity is aligned with discipline. This is the shift. Focus is not something rare. It is not something reserved for a few people. It is the natural state of a brain that is no longer overloaded, no longer negotiating, no longer distracted. And once you reach this point, everything becomes simpler. You don't need to push yourself. You don't need to wait for the right moment. You execute. You move. You follow through. You don't need more motivation. You need to stop sabotaging your own brain. Now there are only two paths in front of you. You either go back to the same cycle, repeating the same patterns, hoping something changes, or you take control. Apply this, and become the person who no longer depends on motivation to act. The choice is already yours.